Well, our big focus, it's not every day that you become the world champion. It's definitely not every day that you become the youngest world champion in history. But Indian Grandmaster D. Gukesh became the youngest world chess champion at 18 years after beating title holder Ding Liren of China in the 14th and last game of a roller coaster showdown that went right down to the wire. Gukesh secured the requisite 7.5 points as against 6.5 of Liren after winning the last classical time control game of the 14-game match that seemed headed for a draw for most part. But I must point out a fact. Before Gukesh, the succession line of world chess champions, which actually started way back in 1886 and has seen 17 men ascend to the throne, has never seen a teenager up until now. So as Amit Kamath put it from The Express, with Gukesh's coronation, the prophecies have come true. The Indian earthquake has just started. And with that, let's actually turn our attention to the neighborhood now and get you a quick update from Bangladesh, where a 17-year-old Hindu girl from Bangladesh ran through the night and crossed over to the Indian side, where she was detained by border security officials and handed over to the West Bengal police. The reason we're told she had to run away was because she was an ISKCON devotee, and she said her family has been facing threats for being from the minority community for the past several weeks. But the situation got out of hand when fundamentalists in Bangladesh threatened to kidnap her and kill the rest of her family, as per her account. That is when she said she decided to run away from her country. Here are the details.
This minor girl from Panchagor in Bangladesh, whose family are ISKCON devotees, fled to India to save her life after threats from radicals in her country. She entered India illegally and was apprehended by the BSF on Tuesday night and was handed over to the Chopra police in Bengal, who then sent her to her shelter home. Her relatives with whom she had planned to stay in India say threats from radicals have become unbearable.
থানায় আসছি স্যার আমার সম্পর্ক ওই নাতিন হবে তো আমি আমার ফোন নাম্বার ওরা জানে সেজন্য আমি থানায় আসছি তো ওনাকে দেখা করার জন্য তো ওরা তো ওইদিকে ও আমাদের ইসকনের ভক্ত বলে ও টর্চারিং করেছে তারপর ওকে কিডন্যাপ করবে এই ভয়ে তো ও আসছে সেজন্য আমার ফোন নাম্বার ওরা নিয়েছিল
Another Hindu youth, 21-year-old Jimon Barman, fled to India after he was threatened and accused by hardline fundamentalists of participating in protests for the release of jailed Hindu monk Chinmay Krishna Das. He was stopped by the BSF when he entered India by swimming in the Korotwa River in Rajganj block and handed over to the Rajganj police station. After interrogation, the police arrested him and he was produced in the Jalpaiguri district court on Wednesday.
আমি একজন সনাতনী আমাদের হিন্দুদের উপর অনেক টর্চার হচ্ছে যার কারণে আমি বাংলাদেশ থেকে ইন্ডিয়াতে আসি
Meanwhile, incarcerated Hindu monk Chinmay Krishna Das remains in jail as his new lawyer also faced attacks in a Chittagong court. Senior advocate Robindra Ghosh says he was attacked when he appeared in court for the Hindu monk.
আমার অ্যাপ্লিকেশনগুলো মুভ করি আমার পিছন দিক দিয়ে দুই একজনে ধাক্কা দিয়েছে আমি জানি না তবে আমার ওদেরকে দেখলে আমি চিনতে পারবো
West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has asked the union government to act.
আমরাও সকলে প্রোটেকশনের দাবি জানাচ্ছি আমরা চাই গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া মাস্ট অ্যাক্ট মানে কি মানুষকে নিরাপত্তা দিক মানুষকে যারা ফিরতে চায় ফিরিয়ে আনার ব্যবস্থা দিক কাজেই টোটালটা গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়ার ব্যাপার আমরা শুধু চাই তারা আমাদের মাইনরিটিসদের রক্ষা করুক
India is walking a diplomatic tightrope when it comes to dealing with the Bangladesh situation as anti-India elements and radical forces continue to target minorities and Hindus in Bangladesh. The Indian government has been pushing for the safety of minorities, especially Hindus. But in a relationship that has so many aspects, the challenge for India remains in keeping the neighborhood friendly and stable. With camera person GD Shankar in Kolkata, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Well, switching tracks, Prime Minister Modi has emphasized on the implementation of the India-Middle East-Europe corridor as a historic initiative to foster regional connectivity and prosperity during his meeting with United Arab Emirates Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Prime Minister Modi also expressed satisfaction at the frequent high-level visits and exchanges, including the visit of the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Khalid bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan to India back in September this year, which marked a generational continuity in bilateral relations. By the way, UAE's foreign minister shared the UAE's perspective on the prevailing situation in West Asia as well, and Prime Minister Modi reiterated India's commitment to support long-term peace, stability as well as security in the region. Let's turn our attention now to the United States. Time magazine has named Donald Trump its Person of the Year, saying perhaps no single individual has played a larger role in changing the course of politics as well as history than the United States president-elect. In a statement explaining the choice, Time has written that Trump has been chosen for marshalling a comeback of historic proportions, for driving a once-in-a-generation political realignment, for reshaping the American presidency and altering America's role in the world. Donald Trump has been announced as Time's 2024 Person of the Year. Now, the other finalists for this year's designation were actually Kamala Harris and ex-owner Elon Musk, as well as Kate, the Princess of Wales. The magazine emphasizes that its choice of Person of the Year is actually based on the figure being newsworthy, not necessarily praiseworthy, and acknowledges that the choices are often controversial. By the way, Donald Trump has invited his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to attend his inauguration ceremony next month, despite his history of hawkish rhetoric and tariff threats. But despite being invited, Xi Jinping isn't planning to attend Donald Trump's inauguration next month, but he might send a senior official to represent him, according to reports. It would be unusual for a leader of a foreign country to be present as the US president gets sworn in, much less one of an American adversary, but ambassadors and other low-level foreign dignitaries are sometimes invited. In addition to inviting Xi Jinping, though, Trump's advisors have said that they are considering inviting other world leaders to the inauguration. We are, of course, waiting for a confirmation on the same. But it's no surprise Donald Trump has often broken with precedent, arguing that voters have empowered him to rethink the way Washington actually works. But despite Donald Trump's invite, in a departure from protocol, reports now claim that China's leader isn't planning to attend. And you may be surprised to hear this, but Amazon is reportedly planning to donate $1 million to President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration fund, as founder and billionaire Jeff Bezos follows in the footsteps of Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who directed his company to make the same contribution earlier this week. As far as the insider details are concerned, I must tell you that Jeff Bezos is actually set to have dinner with Trump next week at his private Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. And a little bit of context for you, Jeff Bezos and Trump have actually had lots of contention in the past, a very contentious relationship. Trump has repeatedly criticized the Washington Post, which Bezos owns, and complained about its coverage of his first term. Amazon Web Services complained that Trump intervened to block a $10 billion cloud computing contract. This was with the Department of Defense in the US, and Trump has said that the Post should be registered as a lobbyist that's working on behalf of Amazon. From the US, let's take you to France now, where President Emmanuel Macron is expected to announce his choice for France's next prime minister today in a bid to end months of political turmoil there. 8 days after French MPs ousted Michel Barnier as prime minister in a no-confidence vote, Macron cut short a visit to Poland just yesterday and had been expected to come up with a new name on his return. But as we have been covering, French politics has been deadlocked ever since Macron called snap parliamentary elections. This was during the summer. And when he does name a new prime minister, it will be his fourth this year. For further clarity, let's go across to Ray Locker, who joins us live from Washington at the moment. Ray, as we speak, some polls in France actually suggest that 61% of French voters are worried about the current political situation. But the French president's gamble on the far-right support, as we've seen, has so far failed. Would you argue that the route to stability lies now in the complete opposite direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to see some kind of candidate from the left to get some support from the center, enough to get critical mass, something close to a majority to counteract the right-wing movement that knocked out Barnier.
France actually finds itself without a functioning government for the second time in 6 months, Ray. But beyond the blame game, though, what now? Can we see an end on the radar for France's political paralysis?
Well, I'm not very optimistic about that happening anytime soon. I mean, you have basically a three-way split in the assembly between the center, the far left, and the far right, and neither side shows any indication of a real meaningful compromise. And meanwhile, France has a number of challenges. I mean, its budget deficit is out of whack, and they need to fix a lot of spending issues. And people don't want to do that. So I don't know where that leaves Macron, who is increasingly unpopular.
Is he viewed as an increasingly unpopular leader even on the global stage, Ray?
Well, I mean, in terms of how he deals with other world leaders, he seems to do fine. He seems to be popular with other leaders in Europe. His relationship with Trump is iffy. But inside the country, he's not doing well.
Right, well, French politics has been deadlocked ever since Macron actually called the snap parliamentary elections during the summer. And when he does name a new prime minister, which is expected today, it will be his fourth this year. Ray Locker, as always, thanks so much for joining us with your quick comments.
Thank you.
With that, let's turn our attention now to the neighborhood, to Pakistan, where former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi have been indicted in a new corruption case. The case, which is the third graft reference against them, revolves around the purchase of an expensive Bulgari jewelry set at a throwaway price. This is what local media is reporting. And this development actually comes just a week after the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf founder and other leaders of his party were charged in connection with an attack on the army's general headquarters in Rawalpindi during last year's May 9th protests. Although Mr. Khan was granted bail in the case by the Islamabad High Court last month, he is currently still in prison due to multiple charges which are dating back to his arrest on the 5th of August last year. And as always, news and updates continue right here on NDTV 24/7. We're slipping into a very short break, but don't go anywhere. Let's get you a quick update as far as Syria is concerned. The UN chief has decried recent and extensive violations of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity as Israel continues to push into Syrian territory beyond the occupied Golan Heights. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Syria's new government has said a judicial and human rights committee will be established to examine the constitution and then introduce amendments, with both the constitution and government suspended for 3 months. In addition, humanitarian groups continue to warn of the dire situation in the country, saying it is not ready to support hundreds of thousands of returning refugees. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on an emergency tour after the overthrow of Syria's dictatorship in a new last-minute attempt to shape a Middle East legacy after a turbulent year, to say the least. The top US diplomat of President Joe Biden, who has little more than 1 month in office now, is set to press principles he has outlined for a new government, including that it be inclusive of Syria's diverse populations. Mr. Blinken first headed to actually Jordan, after which he's going to be in Turkey. But as far as Jordan is concerned, Syria is often considered it an uneasy neighbor, even though it's a key US partner in the region. Then he heads to Turkey, the main supporter of the Islamist movement that toppled Bashar al-Assad's regime over the weekend. Blinken has stressed that the United States' support for an inclusive Syrian-led transition to an accountable and representative government needs to be followed, something that Matthew Miller has also reiterated. In other news, according to a report, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's 180-degree turn in immigration policy has hit the country's higher education sector quite hard, as the Trudeau government capped foreign student permits earlier this year, a population key to sustaining Canadian universities. However, the once thriving industry is reeling from job losses, program suspensions, and possible closures, especially at smaller institutions, as the government continues its crackdown on foreign students, temporary workers, and even permanent resident targets to relieve its strained housing market, the job market, as well as public services. NDTV's Vishal Vivek has the entire lowdown for you.
It is time to make the adjustments to stabilize the immigration system that we need and get it working right for Canadians for right now.
Canada has clamped down heavily on immigration this year.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. And increasingly, bad actors like fake colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years.
According to the new policy, the Trudeau government will cut down immigration by around 20% in 2025. The permanent residence number will be 3,95,000 in 2025, 3,80,000 in 2026 and 3,65,000 in 2027, down from 4,85,000 in 2024. The number of temporary residents is also set to decrease by about 30,000 to around 300,000 in 2025. Earlier this year, Canada slashed the number of international student permits it issues by another 10%. The government said that the new target for 2025 and 2026 will be 4,37,000 permits. In 2024, the target was 4,85,000 permits. The objective of the government is to offset social and housing pressures by vastly cutting the number of temporary residents in the country. But the question is whether the dramatic changes have worked. The answer to that raises several questions in turn. According to a Bloomberg report, the changes have rattled Canada's higher education sector. The once thriving industry is reeling from job losses, program suspensions, and possible closures. International students make up around 18% of university students in Canada. According to the report, colleges have had to suspend dozens of programs and cut jobs to manage their budget. Some colleges are planning to lay off as many as 400 workers. Many colleges are planning how to adjust to fewer students in future. To keep operations running without new revenue from foreign students is also emerging as a big challenge. With his popularity already in tatters and calls for his removal getting louder, the drastic immigration policy changes seem to have sprung up an unpleasant surprise for Justin Trudeau, with the ripple effect being felt on Canada's education sector. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Switching tracks, political turbulence continues in South Korea as the country's ruling party is now backing attempts to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol over his ill-fated decision to declare martial law that sparked a political crisis and widespread public anger in the country. The announcement came moments before Yoon delivered a defiant speech where he attempted to justify his hugely controversial martial law decision and rejected growing calls from across the political spectrum for him to stand down. Yoon Suk-yeol defended his martial law decree in what he called an act of governance and denied rebellion charges and rejected the opposition-led impeachment attempts and investigations against him. Meanwhile, from the US Now News, FBI Director Chris Wray will resign at the end of the Biden administration, clearing the way for Trump's pick, Kash Patel. Trump, who originally nominated Wray after firing the previous FBI director, announced he will nominate Kash Patel for the role, although Wray still had 3 years remaining on his 10-year term. Trump lauded Wray's resignation announcement in a Truth Social post, calling it a great day for America as it will end the weaponization of what has become known as the United States Department of Injustice. We will now restore the rule of law for all Americans. Gauri Dwivedi earlier spoke to Brahma Jalani, strategic affairs expert, to make sense of the latest developments as far as Trump's inner circle is concerned. Here's what he told NDTV.
Very vocally saying that, the way that he was hounded, his house was raided, all of it illegally done. He says that all of this could end with Chris Wray making way for Kash Patel. If he is approved by the Senate, how much do you think Kash Patel could shake up the system as Trump wants it?
We should not forget that this weaponization of the US justice system has also become an instrument of foreign policy for the deep state. The two indictments that relate to India, one in October against a former Indian intelligence officer, and then last month's indictment of Gautam Adani, both were politically driven indictments. They reveal that the Department of Justice not only has been weaponized against political opponents at home, but also is being used against specific overseas targets. So if Kash Patel becomes the FBI director, his task would be to overhaul the FBI and halt its politicization. The question is whether Trump will succeed in reining in the deep state, because Kash Patel is going to be working under Trump. And the FBI is only one of the pillars of the deep state. The other pillars of the deep state, including the 18 intelligence agencies, Tulsi Gabbard will be in charge of those agencies if she's confirmed by the Senate.
Yes.
Then also, we have the State Department, which is also an important pillar of the deep state. In fact, in March 2020, Trump called the State Department the Deep State Department. So, today he has taken on all the pillars of the deep state. But the question is whether he'll succeed in reining in the deep state, or the deep state will succeed in reining in Trump, as it did in the first term of Trump. In the first term of
Yes.
Trump, the deep state placed Trump constantly on the defensive.
Absolutely.
They cooked up this Russia collusion hoax.
Yes.
There were two impeachment efforts against Trump.
Yes.
All that kept Trump busy, defending himself.
Yes.
And I'm sure that there'll be a repeat of some of those machinations in
Absolutely.
Trump's second term. So I think there should be no illusions that despite whatever he has promised, that he'll be able to do what he has promised to do.
Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.